No, the hypocrisy is breathtaking. The hypocrisy is breathtaking, honestly. No one is on your side. Understand this. You have to know this. I mean, even those so-called woke celebrities, the pro-Palestinian celebrities, the Mark Ruffalos, the John Stewart's, what have you, Billie Eilish, Brad Pitt, whoever else. Are you forgetting the fact that these people are multimillionaires? Are you forgetting that fact? I mean, like John Stewart, ranting and raving all of his moral outrage about this or that policy, about Trump, about Israel, about Gaza, what have you. Nobody needs you to shout until you're red in the face. Nobody needs you to crack jokes and to expose injustice and so forth. You're worth over $100 million. We shout and rant and rave. That's what we do. That's what we do because we're not multimillionaires. We don't have the financial power and the financial influence to purchase policy changes. We don't need a Mark Ruffalo to stand next to us at a protest, holding up a sign, getting arrested wearing his keffiyeh. This man has access to tens of millions of dollars. Senators don't cost that much. Congress people don't cost that much. You have a credit limit on your Visa card that you could pay as much as what lobbyists pay out, what they spend. You understand? Put money on the table. That's what you need to do. We don't need tweets from you. We tweet, we protest, we make content and so forth because that's all we can do. Those are the resources that we have, but that's not all that you can do. We don't have the resources that you have. But then we're supposed to be grateful when you use your so-called platform to say something positive, just to say something positive about Palestine. What about using your money? The millions of dollars at your disposal that your platform gives you. Use that money to buy some politicians the same way CEOs do. I mean, I know we're not supposed to criticize or as they say, look a gift horse in the mouth, because maybe we'll alienate these obscenely wealthy celebrities who are lavishly rewarded, for play acting and making jokes. And if they show any sign, small sign of basic human morality, then we're supposed to treat that as very fragile and very brittle because maybe their egos will get bruised, and then they'll abandon their support for Palestine. But I'm saying, what support? What support? We don't need your words. We need your millions. Let's be honest. We have words, us, the normal people. That's what we use. That's what we have, so that's what we use. But you're a multimillionaire, and all you do is say some words like us. So how is that support? That's already withholding support. Be real. That's withholding support. No, I don't think you understand how ugly your society is, really. You don't understand it because you are the propagandized. You're not the propagandists. You're the ones who are indoctrinated. You're the ones who are hypnotized. You're not the hypnotists. You're the one that the trick is being pulled on. You're not the one that's pulling off the tricks. You're the one that the joke is on. You're not the ones who are laughing. So you don't really understand. You're living in a hallucination. Even the ones that you think are on your side are actually from among the same people who are pumping you full of hallucinogens so that you never understand what's going on. You think these people are your allies. But imagine if you're in a fight and your friend doesn't jump in and start swinging, even though they're MMA fighters, they just hang back and tell the crowd, that's my best friend in there. Well, that's not your friend, that's not your ally, and that's not support. If you took together like the top 10 so-called, woke or pro-Palestinian celebrities, you could have a combined pool of money over $1 billion. Over $1 billion. I mean, Mr. Pro-Palestine himself, Roger Waters, has a net worth of around $300 million. Are you telling me that these millionaires, these show business millionaires, can't think of a way to use their wealth and their influence to influence policy the way that every other millionaire in America can figure out? Everyone else knows how to do that. No, nobody is on your side, and it's horrendous. You see, you've been fed a narrative about morality, about virtue, about values, and many of you believe it. Many of you believe that narrative. And you actually do prize those values, but you'll never see them actualized in your society, never. You'll only see them talked about. You'll see them given lip service, and you'll be gaslighted on the basis of the values that they fed you. That's how it works. That's all. That's what they're for. They're narrative devices of social control. Your heroes are on the villain's side, I hate to tell you, and they're playing you for fools. And the values that you have been taught were only taught to you so that they could fool you with them. It's like if you teach your kids to trust only those adults who wear a certain badge or a certain uniform or what have you. And then the predators start to wear those badges and those uniforms.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. I saw a video, Shade Bolson from the Middle Nation talking about Trump as the devil's due. I agree with Mr. Shade Bolson for always talking about all this. And his criticism gives a perspective to what Americans need to hear. Sometimes it might not be something that you want to hear. Sometimes it might be something that is interesting. But I feel like it's time of the truth, and it's time people get to understand the truth. People who criticize all these social, political, economic issues that are happening in Europe and the United States are usually taken or perceived as people who hate white people or who hate Western civilization, right? But you get to realize that what you're calling Western civilization is a total filth, is something which doesn't help a teenage in the United States. Majority of things that people are indoctrinated towards are not helping these people. When you get to see the social life of people and what they believe to be right, especially in Western countries, you get to understand that they are living a filth. And they are living in a system that keeps giving them people who are messed up. And don't think that Mr. Donald Trump came from a vacuum. No, Mr. Donald Trump didn't come from a vacuum. Mr. Donald Trump came from a system. He was raised, he lived in the United States, and so he is a product of the United States. As they say, these things that we are seeing all happening are as a result of indoctrination from where people come from. And what people in the Western world are taught to perceive or to believe, majority of them are filth, majority of them are lies. And that's why we are all seeing all these chaos which are always happening across the internet, every crazy thing which is happening. And so Mr. Donald Trump is a product of the system, and the system keeps bringing you people like that so that the cycles keeps continue. I like the criticism that Mr. Donald Trump, not Mr. Donald Trump, but Mr. Shade Bolson shared with us, and I find it so pragmatic in the essence of understanding how these Western social structures, political structures, economic structures work, because they give you a perspective and you get to see the Western world for what it is. And so, brothers and sisters, I invite you to this video. It's a criticism where Mr. Donald Trump, not Mr. Donald Trump, but where Shade Bolson says that the devil's due a reckoning with empire, right? Now, you need to understand that Shade Bolson's phrase, the devil's due, is not a rhetoric statement. It is true because it's moral indictment, and it suggests that Donald Trump is not an anomaly, but the inevitable consequences of a system that was built on exploitation, that was built on deception and imperial arrogance. According to Shade Bolson, Trump is the embodiment of everything in the United States. He is part of the structure. He is part of the system of the United States, right? Which is long cultivated. Sorry about that. Which is long cultivated racial division, corporate dominance, militarism, and populist manipulation. Shade Bolson argues that when a society consistently rewards greed and punishes truth, it eventually produces a leader who personifies those values. Trump, then, is not the disease, but the symptom of a deeper spiritual and political rot. Brothers and sisters, I invite you to watch this video. If you're watching me for the first time, I'm asking you to please subscribe to the channel, join the membership, and really get to see what I can offer you. But until then, let's watch the video. I'll be back.
For them, the moral talk is just like teaching you code words. You know, teaching your child a code word, for example. Whoever says this, you can trust them. So now the enemy has an easy way to win your trust. Just use the code word. See, that's what indoctrination is. It means that you have been made to believe in a version of the world that's not real. Because if it was real, then you wouldn't have to be indoctrinated. If it was real, then the propaganda wouldn't be necessary. And that means that the reality that's being hidden from you is something that you would not accept if you knew it. It means that things are going on that are not in your interests, but are in the interests of the people who are spreading the narrative, who control the narrative that you are fed about reality. Do you understand? It means that by definition, things are wildly different than you think in the world that you live in. And I've talked about this many, many times. You know, some people are triggered by what I say and they accuse me of hating the West. You know, they accuse me of being divisive or what have you. But look, if the truth is hateful to you, or if you think that someone telling you the truth hates you because they're telling you the truth, why do you think that the one who's been lying to you loves you? The fact of the matter is that the West, the collective West, you know, Western Europe and America, have an absolutely grotesque history. And it doesn't matter what level of society you're even talking about, or what aspect of the so-called civilization that you're talking about. I mean, don't get mad at me for what I'm saying. Get mad about having been lied to about it. That's what you should get mad about. I mean, do you know when the Europeans came to the Muslim world during the Crusades? Subhanallah, they had literally in their lives never met people before who actually were even hygienic, who even washed every day, who bathed regularly, you know, who washed their hands before they ate, who brushed their teeth, who had basic sanitation systems in their societies, in their cities. That was the first time they encountered civilized people. And you know what those Christian crusaders did? Those holy warriors of Christendom? They straight up ate people, boiled human beings. Muslims in pots. They roasted children on spits. That's what they did. And we know that there are numerous incidents of African slaves being cannibalized on the ships, on the boats, and once they got there. And everyone knows by now how Europe practiced what they called medical cannibalism, where they would consume mummified flesh and drink blood because they thought it was good for their health. This is where you come from. They would publicly execute criminals, you know, and then pass blood around the crowd from that criminal for the people to drink. And you don't want to hear about how filthy and how degenerate their monarchs were, their aristocracy were all across Europe. The rich and powerful, how they were infested with lice and parasites, how they defecated where they stood, how diseased and how cruel and how perverted and how syphilitic they were. You know, Henry VIII, Ferdinand VII of Spain, Leopold of Belgium. I mean, it's a through line. It's a through line from Caligula right up to Biden, right up to Trump, right up to Macron until now. Under the powdered wigs and the fancy clothes, there was rot, opulence, and putrescence side by side throughout all of European history. And no, it's not just the aristocracy. No, it's not just the rich. Don't kid yourself. Like I said, we're talking about every level and every aspect of that society. Your doctors were going from performing autopsies to delivering babies without cleaning their instruments, without washing their hands. I mean, when it was even suggested to them that doctors maybe should, and surgeons should wash their hands and should practice basic hygiene as late as the 1840s, the people who suggested that were mocked. Well, you didn't start washing your hands until the 20th century. Do you understand me? Meanwhile, Muslim physicians had been sanitizing for 1,000 years already. In Europe, they would hurl excrement from their windows into the street, literally dumping filth on the people's heads. You had to legislate that to make them stop. You didn't have the basic moral sense and the decency to just not do that. You literally had to be forced by law to stop doing it. The River Thames in London was a moving cesspit. You didn't even build sewers until the 1850s. Meanwhile, Muslims had underground water disposal pipelines for centuries. I'm not saying that you weren't smart enough to do it. I'm saying it wasn't a priority for you. You didn't even think it was important to not have filth in your city. You know that in Paris, in the city of Paris, the morgue used to display bodies behind glass as a sort of a civic attraction. These people are macabre and brutal. This is a macabre and brutal people. I'm telling you, you have to understand the history here. You have to understand the history because it hasn't stopped. Just look at the forced starvation in Gaza, sponsored by the United States of America. Well, this isn't the first time. From the engineered famine against the Irish by the British, the potato famine so-called, to the Germans in East Africa, they starved those people too. They burned their crops, they seized their food. Entire regions were forced into starvation as policy. Same in India in 1943 in Bengal. In Kenya in the 1950s, you had detention camps, you had forced labor, you had torture, you had castration, you had sexual assault, all systematic. You know, France fired nuclear devices in the Algerian desert, and they buried contaminated waste under the sand. As savage as you were to people overseas, you were just as bad to your own. Like I said, you in Ireland, you had those mother and baby homes, the Magdalene laundries by the Catholic Church that were nothing but sadistic torture chambers. That operated deep into the 20th century. The State Commission in Ireland counted thousands of child deaths at those facilities. Those laundries were nothing but forced labor camps. Then, of course, you had the eugenics boards that sterilized tens of thousands of people under legal cover in Scandinavia for decades. In the United States, all across the West, this was going on. You had human zoos, lynchings, rape, torture, murder, mutilation, and cannibalism. See, when I talk about this, you're going to feel like I'm talking about some other society. It's going to feel like I'm talking about some other people, some other primitive, backward, savage people. That's how it will sound to you, that I can't possibly be talking about your own people, because these are all things that you accuse everyone else of being. But in fact, there is no one with a more disgraceful and more degenerate history than the one that you won't teach, because it's your own. You won't teach your own history, and that's a shame. It's a shame because people have a right to know. People need to know what they're dealing with. I mean, your own people need to know that. Your own people need to know what they're dealing with, because the society that they live in is not the society that they were told they live in. I keep telling you, Epstein was not one bad apple. Diddy wasn't. Trump isn't. The truth is that whole barrel is spoiled. The whole barrel is rotten. So what chance does a good apple have in that rotten barrel? Even if you are still insisting to call the continuous record of uninterrupted wrongdoing, uninterrupted sickness, evil, and cruelty, even if you insist on calling that an alarming number of isolated incidents that just keep happening again and again and again at the systemic level, at the institutional level, at the collective level, at the societal level, at the community level, and at the individual level, over and over and over again, without pause, without fail. I'm asking, where is there any evidence of good apples in that rotten barrel? This is a lot that you have to wrap your heads around. I understand that. And it's really just the first level of understanding. It's really just the first level of recognition. The first level is recognizing that, yes, we are not talking about isolated incidents. We are not talking about a few bad apples. We are talking about a so-called civilization that has always been primitive, that has always been brutal, that has always been twisted, and that never changed, that never evolved. And that's why they don't teach you about their history honestly. That's why they have to propagandize you and miseducate you. And why they have to pretend to be shocked. They have to pretend to be shocked by the Diddys and the Epsteins and so forth. Why they pretend to be appalled, precisely to cover up how actually standard this behavior is and always has been in that society. Everything that Diddy was doing is being done right now. Everything that Epstein was doing is being done right now. Good Lord, even what Hitler was doing is being done right now. Even what Leopold did is going on right now. Like I said, it's just a code they use, a hypnotic suggestion when they tell you that there were a few bad apples. When they tell you it's a few bad apples, then you will assume that the rest of the barrel is good, but it's not good. It's diseased. That's just the first level of realization. That's the first level of recognition that you have to come around to. A lot of Westerners will get so triggered and so defensive about this that they won't even be able to accept this layer of reality, much less the next layer of reality, because the next layer is even harder to reconcile yourself with if you're a Westerner. The next layer is realizing that there is no escaping the consequences of your history, and realizing that those consequences are, in fact, being imposed upon you right now, especially in America, but in Europe too. I mean, look at Europe. It's falling apart. Europe is falling apart. They're going extinct, and even their own natural extinction isn't fast enough for them. They're rushing towards war and conflict on the continent. Macron just told hospitals in France that they need to be ready for a European war by next year. War with Russia. They're tearing their own societies apart. They're impoverishing themselves. They're enslaving themselves. They're deindustrializing themselves. They're being asset stripped. Exactly what they did to the people that they colonized. Europe is tumbling into the abyss of their own making. But America, the imperial heir of Europe, the neoliberal economic firing squad of corporate power, They used to spray their bullets like a mass shooter all across the global south, all across the Muslim world, all across Africa, all across so-called Latin America. Well, America is descending into madness. You're descending into madness because you're cursed. That's why I've said you cannot properly analyze geopolitics. You cannot properly analyze geopolitics if you exclude the reality of divine justice. You cannot exclude God from your assessments. You can't exclude Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from your forecasts. And you cannot be as unjust, as brutal, as degenerate, as wicked as America has been, and actually think that the consequences are not going to be severe. You understand? The suffering of whole continents at your hands is going to ricochet back onto America. I said you're cursed. You know it and I know it. That's the truth. We both know this. Because you can't have any sort of religious sense, any religious sense of justice, and not know that. Even if you call yourself a Christian, if you call yourself believing in God in any way whatsoever, you cannot pretend that you don't know that America is cursed, and it has been cursed ever since you all landed over there in the first place and started massacring the indigenous people and stealing their land. What your Zionist brigades are doing to the Palestinians right now is just a fraction of what you did to the Native Americans. What Hitler did was a fraction of what you did, in fact. And you really think that you were going to be able to escape the consequences of that? Of course not. Obviously not. Why do you even think for a minute that you could escape the consequences of decimating millions upon millions of people? To think that you would get away with that, wallahi, to even think that you could get away with that, to even think that you would never be held accountable for that is blasphemy. It's blasphemous for you to think that you could get away scot-free. Especially when you have never even done anything ever since then, except to compound the wrongdoing and to add to your record of crimes. You understand me? You have done nothing to atone. You haven't done anything to atone for what you have done. You and I both know that. Genocide, chattel slavery, rape, torture, lynching, murder, dehumanization, discrimination, segregation, exploitation, subjugation, war all around the world. Why, what sort of a God do you worship that would turn a blind eye to all of that? What kind of a God did you have in mind when you say God bless America? Because I know you're not talking about the God. I know you're not talking about the creator of the universe. Bless America for what? Bless America for what? If you did what you did and then say God bless America, that's just another blasphemy. Well, you're taking the Lord's name in vain when you say God bless America. That's the truth. You can't invoke God to bless what he has prohibited. You can't invoke God to bless what he punishes, to bless what causes his wrath. You have been worshiping someone else entirely, something else entirely. You have taken a whole other being as your God. If you actually think that your actions merit any sort of blessing, no one would bless what you have done as a nation except Iblis. No one would approve of what you have done except for the devil himself. That's why I told you that. And why you need to know. You need to understand this about your society. The West has been worshiping the jinn. They've been worshiping the shayateen ever since prehistory, like I said. And that formed the whole character, the whole ethos of their so-called civilization. You can't properly understand the West if you don't understand that. Honestly, you can't be dismissive about that. And like I said last time, this is in fact exactly why they are almost the only people in the whole world who pretend that the devil doesn't exist. They're almost the only people. They're the only people. The people in the Muslim world, the people in Africa, the people in Latin America, the people in Asia. Everyone knows this is real. Even in places like Russia and China, after decades of state-imposed atheism, most people there even also still accept this reality. Different people in different places call the jinn different things, sure. Demons, ghosts, fairies, spirits, whatever the case may be. But we know the reality. We know the reality of the unseen, but your so-called civilization insists on denying it. Exactly the same way that they deny everything else that's true about reality, that's true about themselves. While their denial is conspicuous in this way, it's a protective, defensive denial. Because no one else is more closely aligned, in fact, and more subservient to the shayateen as much as your society. So that denial is part of what is expected of you. That's part of the cover-up that is expected of you. And that's just par for the course with you, because anyway, you cover up everything already as it is. Now listen, again, I'm not attacking you. Understand me. Please understand me. If your house is on fire and I come to tell you that your house is burning and you need to get out, are you going to get defensive because you think I'm insulting your house? Use your mind. There's a poison gas leak in your building, and your building manager is trying to tell you that everything is fine, and I'm trying to tell you that it's going to kill you. You tell me which one of us, me or that manager, cares more about you and more about your welfare and your well-being. Don't get mad at me. Well, I think that the gas has already gotten to your brain. If you can't think straight enough to know that I'm trying to tell you something for your own good, look, I'm telling you, there is no way to escape the consequences. Okay, I didn't do this to you. Your ancestors did this to you. Your own ancestors did this to you. Your ancestors and your leaders today, your media today, your schools today. Like I said, recognizing and acknowledging the reality of what your ancestors really did and what they really were, and yes, who they really worshiped, understanding that is just the first layer. And as soon as someone accepts this reality, that layer, they just accept that. Then they'll jump immediately to, well, how do we make a change? I'm not like my ancestors. Isn't that good enough? How do we make a change so that we can avoid these negative consequences? Because they haven't accepted that second layer, that most important second layer, which is that the consequences cannot be avoided, cannot be evaded, cannot be resisted, and cannot be defied. The punishment is already underway in America. And like I said, at least one element of that punishment is madness. The society is being driven into madness, just like the syphilitic monarchs of your history. I don't even mean this metaphorically. No, I'm talking quite literally. The society is going insane. I mean, look at any old film clip. I don't mean old Hollywood movies. I don't mean that. I mean, like, look at old interviews, old footage of people talking like in, say, the early 1900s, for example. Listen to them. Listen to how they talk. Listen to the clarity and listen to the sobriety of their voices and their facial expressions. Now open TikTok, open Instagram. Well, if you took someone from 2025 and you send them back to 1925, no matter what they were talking about, everyone would think that they are drunk. Everyone would think that these were mad people, unhinged, unstable, volatile, wild people. Even 50 years ago, they would have that impression. Do you know that according to the previous mental health standards, at least half of the American public today, at least half would be diagnosed as mentally having a mental illness or psychological disorder. And I mean, even according to the modern standards, it's not far from that. Roughly a quarter of all Americans have been diagnosed with some sort of a psychological or mental disorder, and about half of all young people. And I'm telling you, this is the toll of your history. That's what this is. This is the devil taking his due. Don't you know your own folklore? Don't you know about the devil taking payment in the form of your progeny? Those stories don't come out of nowhere. It's the story of your so-called civilization. Your ancestors sold you out for the sake of pomp and splendor in their day. They sold you out so they could sip their mint julep tea on the veranda of some great plantation house in the American South, while human beings were being whipped and being raped and being treated like animals. They sold you out so that they could have their steal their land and have their homesteads and their farms and their ranches soaked in the blood of Native Americans. They sold you out so that they could have the minerals and the oil and the gas and the gold and the diamonds from all around the world, from all around the global South, when colonized people were the ones digging those resources out of the earth for them, and then they themselves got buried in those same holes. That was the bargain. That was the deal that your ancestors made. You know, everyone thinks or everyone says that America was built on stolen land by stolen labor. Yes, but I'm telling you that there's no such thing as stolen land. There's no such thing as stolen labor. There's only borrowed land. There's borrowed labor, and eventually you're going to have to pay for it. And your payment is coming due. There's no fix. Because when you think about trying to fix things, what you really mean is trying to figure out how to put off the inevitable consequences, and that's not going to happen. You can forget about that. You can't vote your way out. You can't policy your way out. You can't march or protest your way out. You can't virtue signal your way out. You can't even reparations your way out. The bill is due, and payment will be taken one way or another. And as I say, payment is already being taken right now. I'm telling you, the fate of America is sealed. And it was sealed over 400 years ago. You're just now reaching the end of that contract. You know, I said some time ago that Trump was actually hated in America and Europe during his first administration. Everyone knows. But he was actually popular in the global South. Around the rest of the world, people liked Trump. Arabs liked him, Asians, Africans, South Americans generally. Generally speaking, he was actually popular with the countries in the global South. Even China likes him, despite the performative rivalry. And I'll tell you why. Because we all recognize that he is the embodiment of the devil's due. Trump being appointed over the United States signaled to the rest of us the end of American empire. Now, don't blame him for that. Like I said, it isn't happening because of Trump. Trump just proves that it's happening. Trump is just a big orange final notice for payment due. That's what he is. And he's overseeing the dismantling of the American-centric world order. The walls are closing around America. And the demons are descending down into those, between those walls to loot and to pillage anything and everything and anyone and everyone in that land. And I'm not saying this spitefully, and I'm not saying it hatefully, and I'm not trying to rub it in, and I'm not trying to gloat. You understand? I'm not trying to insult you. But you need to understand this was always going to happen. And they have not prepared you for it. They have lied to you about what's going on. They've lied to you about your country. They lied to you about your history. They lied to you about who they are. They lied to you about what they are. They lied to you about how they have been, so that you couldn't see what was coming. You couldn't see this coming. In fact, most of you still can't see it coming, even though it's upon you already. And that's unfair. To me, I find that unfair. It's unfair to you. It's unjust to you. It's treacherous. Like I said, it's like you're in a building that has a gas leak and the manager of that building keeps telling you that everything is fine. Well, it's not fine. It's diabolical. That's a diabolical thing to do. It's a diabolical way to treat your own people. So I know there'll be people who say, okay, what can we do about it? And that's what I'm trying to tell you. There is nothing you can do about it. There is nothing you can do about it. You have to understand that what is happening is irreversible, and you need to make a way for yourself. Your inheritance is a running tab across the centuries, and the collectors are not sentimental at all. They will take payment in the most precious of currencies. They'll take payment in the form of your sanity, of your family, of your future, of your children. Your society is sliding into delirium, and you can see it in their eyes. You can hear it in their voices. You can recognize it in their ranting and in their deceit. Their perpetual condition of chronic dishonesty. You can see they're losing their minds. So what do? You need to refuse the rituals that confirm you as a part of that bargain, because that's what they are. They're rituals. You're tithing to the idols of empire, and you're subscribing to the creed of empire, profit without conscience, public discourse without truth, pleasure without responsibility, loyalty without justice. You know, at Middle Nation, we talk about epistemological sovereignty. And of course, we're talking about the Muslims. We mean Muslims. But even if you are a non-Muslim, you need to extricate yourself from the language and the lexicon, ideologically, the intellectual lexicon of Western so-called civilization, from the paradigms, from the propaganda, from the ideologies, from the bigotries, from the falsehood, from the triviality, and from the trivialization of what actually matters, the trivialization of the important, and the polarization over insignificant things. Performative morality as a smokescreen for actually operative immorality. You need to learn to speak in words that actually carry weight. Don't just repeat slogans, slogans and talking points. Break the hypnosis of the entertainment that they're playing for you to drown out the alarm bells that are supposed to inform you that your house is filling up with gas. Partition your household, partition yourself with a disciplined approach to information and discourse. Seal yourself off from nonsense as much as you can, wallahi. Don't just shrug when people spew nonsense. It's not innocuous. You shrug, you expose your jugular, and that's the whole point. You understand me? Don't let your guard down when people start talking nonsense. That's when you need to put your guard up, because they're talking nonsense for a reason. And you need to try to reduce your dependency on the systems that are collapsing right now. Debt is a leash. You need to cut it, even if that means self-imposed harsh austerity in your lifestyle. You need to get yourself out of debt. Consumption is also a leash. The less you consume, the more you're going to be able to breathe. Remember, this isn't about trying to change what's happening. This isn't about trying to change what's happening. It's about trying to survive what's happening, because it's going to happen either way. It's about trying to survive and hopefully getting through it in a way that will allow you to thrive. So you need to accept the fact that the empire is going to keep, rearranging the furniture to distract you from the fact that the whole structure is falling apart. They're going to continue to feed you slogans and contradictory policies and pronouncements and news and misinformation and promises. You need to ignore all of that. They're going to try to auction both nostalgia and cartoonish hope. They're going to package decline as renewal. They try to sell you therapy for the wounds that they themselves keep inflicting on you. And you need to try to disconnect you need to disconnect from those headphones. Don't be distracted and don't be preoccupied with Trump. He's just the stamp on the envelope that carries the final notice. You don't have to like him or hate him in order to read what that notice says. The message is quite simple. The American-centric world order is closing its books. It's closing out its accounts. And most of the world has already adjusted to this reality. Most people in the world are already prepared for the life after that. They have new partnerships. They have new circuits of capital. They have new corridors of trade. Your leaders hid this update from you by MAGA spamming you. So now you have to prepare yourself without them. Like I say, no one is on your side. So prepare. Don't panic. Prepare. Try to learn a craft, for example, that produces value independent of the centralized system. Grow something edible. Fix something broken. Keep modest reserves for yourself in food, water, essential goods, and so forth, essential tools, and share them on a reciprocal community-building basis. Try to remove all theatrics and performance from your life, from your behavior, from your personality. Try to rotate yourself away from device screens and towards studies, away from algorithms towards actual people, away from outrage towards service. These are very old instructions, and they work before empires rose and they work after empires fall. If your convenience rests on someone else's pain, then you need to become comfortable with inconvenience. You need to guard your mind. Your culture markets derangement as liberation. You need to protect your children's innocence the same way that you would protect their lungs in a house full of poison gas. Don't outsource the formation of your children's character and their personalities and their minds. Don't outsource that to their iPads and their devices. Because remember, the devil will take your children as payment for your ancestors' debt if you allow your children to be currency. So protect your family. Gather your own people. Gather your people. Choose a small circle and formalize mutual obligations. Write them down. Share meals, share costs, share childcare, share transport, share learning. When supply lines snap, and they will, those bonds will hold. They'll also keep you human in a time that drains people of their humanity. And if you're Muslim, and really even if you're not Muslim, because this truly is essential, turn your face to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pray for the courage to pay what you owe in repentance. Pay what you owe in repentance before it's taken in punishment. And pray for the rulers, even the ones that you resent. Pray that they will be saved from doing harm and from being harmed. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will use them as instruments of justice, even despite themselves. Pray for the oppressed, at home and abroad. Pray that they will be given relief, that they'll be given dignity, and that they'll be given victory without corruption. Don't confuse patience with passivity. Endurance is a weapon. Endurance is a weapon, and it gives you time to decide what the next right move is, what the next right decision is going to be. And then one decision after another, that becomes your life. The devil's due is real. That bill is older than any voter roll. It's thicker than any law book. Your ancestors opened the account with conquest and with cruelty, and every generation has added line items: wars, theft, deception, degradation, and so forth. And the compounding interest on that debt became your culture. You are both unfortunate enough and blessed enough to be alive at the moment of reckoning. It's very heavy, but it's also an honor. You can choose to be better ancestors to your descendants than yours were to you. Consider that right now, you are writing the history that will be in the curriculum of your great-grandchildren. And your descendants, inshallah bi'idhnillah, can actually be grateful then for what you do now. No speeches are going to cancel the ledger. No speeches are going to rewrite the record. But a household can change its fate. A community can change its fate. A people can repent and they can rise and they can live as witnesses and custodians, answerable to God, mindful of the consequences of their actions, the reality of consequences of their actions. They can be stubbornly decent in an age of indecency and ruin. So audit your income for injustice, audit your habits for self-destructive tendencies, keep your eyes open, keep your tongue truthful, keep your mind sharp, and keep your hands productive. Try to settle your account as best as you can with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while you can. And protect the people who have been entrusted to you and try to build a way for them to live when this old order finally does collapse completely upon itself. Because if you do this, then the collectors won't find anything that they're looking for when they come to your house to collect on your ancestors' debts.
One of the crucial points that Mr. Shahid Bolton touches on, and I like it, and he talks about the grotesque nature of the United States, foundational hypocrisy. You get to understand that the critique of the United States begin at its foundings. It says the contradiction between the ideas of liberty and the reality of slavery as not just an historical footnote, but a defining nature of American identity. The grotesqueness in his analysis lies in the normalization of violence and inequality under the guise of freedom. From the genocide of indigenous people to the global military-industrial complex, he goes on and talks about how the U.S. nation, whose moral compass has always been skewed towards domination, the grotesque is not just aesthetic; it's ethical, systemic, and deeply embedded in the American psyche. Talking about morality, I've seen majority of these people from the Western world talk about morality, and I find this hypocritical because when you talk about immorality, they are not seeing how the Western world, how it did to some group of people. They raped, they manipulated, they made them work for free, forced labor, and then they talk about morality, and then they have the power to judge people for some wrongdoings. I don't think the Western, the Western countries or the Western people from the Western world understand the meaning of morality, because they believe that they are standing on a holy ground and they're in a position of judging you. Yet people are seeing them for who they are. People are seeing them for the atrocities that they have caused across the world, for the chaos that they have brought. Look at the social life that these people live. People don't know how to live peacefully. Every night and day you wake up, you're listening to a person was shot on the street, a child was just bored, and you went in the class and shot everyone. All these things that you hear happening are crazy. And this is the skewedness. This is how filthy the United States is. Because it raises people who are psychologically disturbed. It raises a group of people that doesn't understand what is called civilization. And so when you talk about morality, I don't think the United States is on a holy ground to judge other countries for doing what they're doing. And I'm not trying to justify evil in this place, but I feel like it's time the Western world, the Europe, take accountability of what they have been putting all these people through. And so it's important to understand that concept. Bolton often frames the US as an empire in decline, where the grotesque become theatrical. He sees Trump's presidency as a kind of grotesque performance, loud, vulgar, chaotic, mirroring the unraveling of American hegemony, the spectacle of political dysfunction, racial unrest, and economic disparity. These all things that you see are happening. They are not happening by accident. This is the final act of system that has exhausted its moral and material resource. Now, Shahid Bolton argues that the US is no longer able to mask its contradictions. And Trump's rise simply made those contradictions impossible to ignore. And everything that you're seeing are happening are as a result of the people that they put in the system, as a result of the people that are reflecting the broader United States and what really the United States embodies, right? So all these that we are seeing, they are the true picture of what the United States is. Talking about Western indoctrination, Mr. Shahid Bolson's analysis of Western indoctrination draws heavily from thinkers like Noam Chomsky and Edward Said, and he argues that Western societies are conditioned to accept imperialism, capitalism, and cultural supremacy through media, through education, and entertainment. The indoctrination is subtle but powerful. It teaches people to see Western values as universal and dissent as dangerous. Bolson warns that this conditioning makes it difficult for citizens to recognize their own complicity in global injustice. The Western mind, he suggests, is trained to believe in its own innocence. These people are blind for the evils that they see. They're doing the evil, but they're just saying that they are right for what they're doing. And so it's important for us to understand where all this comes from. Propaganda is part of culture of the United States. Shahid Bolson particularly critical of Western media, which he sees as a tool of psychological warfare. He argues that news outlets don't just report, they shape reality. He argues that by controlling narratives around war, poverty, and race, media institutions manufactured consent for policies that benefit elites and harm the marginalized. Trump's relationship with the media, both antagonistic and symbiotic, is a case study in this dynamic. According to Shahid, he sees media's obsession with Trump as part of grotesque spectacle, distracting the public from deeper systemic issues, right? Exporting the grotesque, what are the global implications about this, right? Shahid Bolson also critiques the U.S. To the U.S. alone. He argues that the grotesque nature of American politics has been exported globally through neoliberalism, military intervention, cultural imperialism. Countries in global south, including Kenya, are often forced to adopt Western models of government and development that serve foreign interest more than the local ones. Bolson sees this as a form of modern colonialism, one that justifies through the same indoctrination that builds Western citizens to their own empire's violence. Right? So, brothers and sisters, please let me know what you think about this video. I'm your host and presenter Agent Stories, but until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.